The diplomatic incident. The massive space station called Harmony's Rest floated in the empty space between star systems. It was the size of a small moon, and served as the meeting place for all the different alien races in the galaxy. Today, something important was happening. The humans were here for their first big meeting with the Galactic Council. Captain Sarah Chen walked through the long hallways of the station. Her black military uniform looked simple compared to the fancy clothes worn by the aliens around her. She was not very tall, but she moved with purpose. Her brown eyes took in everything around her as she headed to the meeting room. The hallways were filled with strange beings. Some looked like giant crystals that moved and talked. Others were clouds of gas that somehow stayed together in the shape of people. There were creatures with too many arms, others with no arms at all, and some that looked like walking trees. All of them stared at Sarah as she passed by. Sarah did not mind the stares. She knew what they were thinking. Humans were new to the galaxy. Most of these aliens had been traveling between stars for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. To them, humans were just babies who had recently learned to walk. Ambassador Torres was waiting for Sarah outside the meeting room. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been working with aliens for many years and knew their ways. "Are you ready for this?" Torres asked Sarah in a quiet voice. "As ready as I can be," Sarah replied. "What should I expect?" "The Zephyrians think they are the strongest race in the galaxy," Torres explained. "They have won every war they have ever fought. Their commander, Vexthara, is very proud. He does not like it when people disagree with him." Sarah nodded. She had read about the Zephyrians in her briefing files. They were blue-skinned aliens with 4 arms and were known for being excellent fighters. They had conquered many worlds and made other races serve them. The meeting room was huge. The ceiling was so high that Sarah could barely see it. A long table sat in the center of the room, surrounded by chairs of different sizes and shapes to fit all the different types of aliens. Large windows showed the stars outside. Commander Vexthara was already seated at the table. He was bigger than Sarah had expected. His blue skin had dark stripes and his 4 arms were thick with muscle. 2 of his hands rested on the table while the other 2 hung at his sides. His eyes were yellow with black slits like a snake. When he looked at Sarah, she could see that he thought she was weak. "So this is the human representative," Vexthara said. His voice was deep and rough. "You look very small for a warrior race." "I am not here to fight," Sarah said calmly. "I am here to talk about mining rights in the neutral zones." Vexthara laughed. It was not a friendly sound. "All the best conversations start with the threat of force, human. That is how the galaxy works." Other aliens began to fill the room. The crystal beings made musical sounds as they moved. The gas creatures whispered to each other in voices like wind. Everyone found their seats and the meeting began. Ambassador Torres spoke first. He explained that humans wanted to mine asteroids in the space between Zephyrian territory and human space. The asteroids contained rare metals that humans needed to build their ships and cities. "The terms are simple," Vexthara said when Torres finished. "You give us 70% of everything you mine. We let you work in that space without attacking your ships." "That seems unfair," Sarah said. "We would be doing all the work while you get most of the profit." "Fair?" Vexthara's yellow eyes grew bright with anger. "You have been in space for less than 100 years. We have ruled this part of the galaxy for over 2,000 years. You should be grateful we let you exist at all." "We are grateful for the chance to talk," Sarah replied. "But we will not accept a deal that bad. Perhaps we can find something that works for both of us." "There is nothing to discuss," Vexthara said, standing up. All 4 of his arms moved as he talked. "You take our offer or you leave." "Then I think we should look for other options," Sarah said. She remained sitting and kept her voice calm. "Maybe other races would be more reasonable to work with." Vexthara's face turned darker blue with rage. "You dare suggest that the mighty Zephyrians are not reasonable? You think some other weak race would be better partners than us? I think any race that wants to work together instead of just taking what they want would be better partners," Sarah said. The room became very quiet. Even the gas creatures stopped whispering. Everyone could feel that something bad was about to happen. "You insult us," Vexthara said. His voice was now very quiet, which made it sound more dangerous. "You come here from your little world and think you can speak to us like equals. Your species is nothing. You are used to dealing with weak races that roll over when you push them." "Actually," Sarah said, still calm, "we are used to fighting for everything we get. Our world taught us that nothing comes easy. That was the wrong thing to say. Vexithara had been looking for a reason to put the humans in their place. His pride had been hurt in front of all the other alien races. He could not let a human, especially such a small one, speak to him like that. Before anyone could react, Vexithara moved. He was fast for such a big creature. One of his 4 hands came across the table and hit Sarah hard across the face. The sound echoed through the quiet room like a gunshot. The blow was strong enough to break the bones of most alien species. It was meant to send Sarah flying across the room and show everyone what happened when you disrespected a Zephyrian commander. But Sarah barely moved. Her head turned slightly to the right from the impact. A thin line of blood appeared at the corner of her mouth, but she did not fall. She did not cry out. She did not even seem surprised. Slowly, very slowly, Sarah turned her head back to look at Vexithara. When her brown eyes met his yellow ones, something had changed. The other aliens in the room felt it immediately. Some of them actually took steps backward without knowing why. Sarah wiped the blood from her mouth with the back of her hand. When she spoke, her voice was still calm, but now it carried something else, something that made the temperature in the room seem to drop. "Commander Vexithara," she said quietly, "on my world, when someone strikes another person like that, it means only one thing. It is a challenge to fight to the death." Vexithara laughed, but it sounded forced. "Your world must be full of fools, then. Do you really think you can fight me, little human?" Sarah stood up slowly. She was still much smaller than Vexithara, but somehow she seemed more dangerous now. "I think," she said, "that you have made a very big mistake." The other aliens watched in fascination and growing fear. None of them had ever seen what happened when you made a human angry. They were about to learn why Earth was marked in their databases as a death world, a planet so dangerous that most species would die just from visiting it. Sarah looked around the room at all the watching aliens. "I need 5 minutes to prepare," she said, "and I suggest you start recording this. The galaxy is about to learn something important about humans." The meeting room erupted in chaos as aliens began talking all at once. Some spoke in musical tones, others in clicks and whistles, and a few made sounds like grinding metal. But underneath all the noise, everyone was asking the same question. Had a human really just challenged a Zephyrian commander to a fight to the death? Ambassador Torres closed his eyes and sighed. He had worked so hard to make this first meeting go smoothly. Now everything was falling apart, but he also knew Sarah Chen, and he knew that once she made up her mind about something, nothing could change it. "Captain Chen," Torres said quietly, "perhaps we should think about this. There might be another way to handle this situation." Sarah looked at him with those brown eyes that now seemed to hold fire. "Ambassador, with respect, he struck me in front of representatives from dozens of species. If I back down now, every alien in the galaxy will think humans are weak. They will think they can hit us whenever they want." She was right, and Torres knew it. In the galaxy, respect was earned through strength. If humans showed weakness now, it would make every future negotiation much harder. Commander Vexithara was still laughing. He had 4 arms, each one stronger than both of a human's arms combined. He was taller, heavier, and had been trained to fight since he was young. In his mind, this would be the easiest fight of his life. "I accept your foolish challenge, human," Vexithara said loudly so everyone could hear. "When I am done with you, your people will know their place in this galaxy." "Good," Sarah said simply. She turned to address the room full of aliens. "I need to send a message to my ship and prepare for combat. I request 5 minutes. A tall alien that looked like it was made of living crystal spoke up. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. "This request is reasonable. The combat area will be prepared." Sarah walked to a quiet corner of the room and activated her communicator. The device was small and looked simple, but it could send messages across thousands of light years in just seconds. "Captain Chen to Earth Command," she said quietly into the device. "Earth Command here," came the reply.
"What is your status, Captain?"
"I have been challenged to single combat by the Zephyrian commander. He struck me during negotiations. I am requesting permission to show these aliens why our world is classified as a forbidden zone." There was a long pause. Sarah could imagine the discussion happening back on Earth. The generals and politicians would be weighing the risks and benefits. Finally, the answer came. "Permission granted, Captain. Make it educational for them." Sarah smiled for the first time since being hit. "Understood, Command. Chen out." She turned back to the room and saw that the aliens were busy setting up a space for the fight. Chairs and tables were being moved to create a large circle in the center of the room. Some aliens were setting up recording devices while others were making what looked like bets on the outcome. Ambassador Torres approached her again.
Sarah, I have to ask.
Are you sure about this? Vexthara is not just any Zephyrian. He is one of their best warriors. He has killed dozens of opponents in combat. I know, Sarah said. I read his file, but he has never fought a human before. What makes you so confident? Torres asked. Sarah looked at him seriously. Do you know what the mortality rate was for humans before we developed modern medicine? Torres shook his head. 60% of children died before their 5th birthday, Sarah said. Not from war or starvation, but just from living on Earth. Our world tried to kill us every single day. Poisonous animals, deadly weather, diseases, predators that could smell us from miles away. Everything on Earth wanted to eat us, kill us, or use us as food for their babies. She paused and looked around the room at all the different aliens. These species come from worlds where the biggest danger might be a storm or an earthquake. They evolved to be intelligent because their worlds were safe enough for them to spend time thinking, instead of fighting, just to stay alive. And humans? Torres asked, though he thought he knew the answer. Humans evolved to be intelligent and dangerous, Sarah said. We had to be smart enough to make tools and work together, but also fast enough and strong enough to kill things that were trying to kill us. Every human alive today is descended from millions of years of survivors. Torres nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand why Earth was marked as a death world in the galactic databases. Across the room, Commander Vexithera was preparing for battle in the traditional Zephyrian way. He removed his outer clothing to show his muscled blue skin. Scars covered his arms and chest, proof of his many victories. He performed stretching exercises that showed off his flexibility and strength. 2 Zephyrian assistants brought him his weapons. Traditional combat blades that curved slightly and were sharp enough to cut through most types of armor. He would carry 1 blade in each of his 4 hands, giving him a huge advantage in speed and reach. The other aliens watched his preparation with obvious respect. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as master warriors. Many species had tried to resist them over the centuries, and all had failed. Meanwhile, Sarah Chen was doing something much simpler. She removed her military jacket and folded it neatly. Underneath, she wore a simple black shirt that showed her arms and shoulders. To the watching aliens, she looked terrifyingly ordinary, but Ambassador Torres, who had worked with humans for years, noticed things that the aliens missed. Sarah's muscles were not as big as Vexthara's, but they were dense and clearly defined. Her movements were smooth and controlled, like a cat getting ready to hunt. Most importantly, her breathing and heart rate were actually slowing down instead of speeding up. Why is she becoming calmer? Asked one of the crystal beings. Torres smiled grimly. Because humans are persistence hunters. We evolved to chase our prey for hours or even days until it was too tired to run anymore. When we get ready to fight, we don't get excited. We get focused. Sarah walked to the center of the combat circle. She had requested no weapons, which had confused many of the aliens. How could she fight a trained warrior with 4 blades using nothing but her bare hands? Are you ready to die, human? Vexithara asked as he entered the circle. His 4 blades caught the light and gleamed like silver fire. Are you? Sarah replied quietly. The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of the recording devices. Representatives from dozens of species watched as a small human woman faced off against one of the galaxy's most feared warriors. Commander Vexithara raised his 4 weapons and prepared to attack. He had fought many different species over the years, but they had all used similar tactics. They tried to match his speed and strength, or they tried to stay far away and wear him down. All of them had failed. Sarah Chen stood perfectly still in the center of the circle. Her hands hung loose at her sides. Her brown eyes never left Vexithara's face. She looked like she was waiting for something, but no one knew what. Begin, called the crystal being who was serving as the judge. Vexithara charged forward with a roar, all 4 blades spinning in a deadly pattern that had never failed to kill his opponents. The fight was about to begin. Preparation and revelation. While the combat area was being prepared, news of the challenge spread quickly through the space station. Aliens from dozens of different species began gathering outside the meeting room. Some came because they were curious about humans. Others came because they wanted to see Commander Vexithara fight. Most came because they had never seen a human in actual combat before. The crystal beings, who called themselves the hierarchs, were especially interested. They lived for thousands of years and collected information about every species they met. Their databases contained detailed files on almost every intelligent race in the galaxy, but their file on humans was surprisingly thin. "What do we actually know about human combat abilities?" asked one hierarch to another. Its crystalline body pulsed with different colors as it thought. "Very little," replied the second hierarch. "They come from what we classify as a Class 12 Deathworld. The gravity is 30% higher than galactic standard. The atmosphere contains high levels of oxygen, which makes fires burn faster and hotter. The weather systems are violent and unpredictable. But what about the humans themselves? Their initial scans showed normal physical capabilities for a species their size. Bone density is higher than average, muscle fibers are more compact, but nothing that seemed unusual. They appeared to be a typical developing species." The first hierarch's colors shifted to show confusion. If they are so ordinary, why is their world classified as forbidden to most species? Because 97% of known species would die within one local day of landing on Earth, came the answer. Not from the humans, but from the planet itself. The microbial life, the atmospheric pressure, the background radiation, the predatory animals, everything on that world is hostile to life. Meanwhile, in the preparation area, Sarah Chen was getting ready in her own way. She sat quietly on a simple chair, eyes closed, breathing slowly and deeply. To the watching aliens, it looked like she was sleeping or meditating. They had no idea what was actually happening. Sarah was entering what human soldiers called the zone. It was a state of mind that humans could reach when they needed to fight for their lives. Her heart rate slowed to 40 beats per minute. Her breathing became so quiet that it was almost silent. Her mind cleared of everything except the fight that was coming. This was something that had evolved in humans over millions of years. When their ancestors faced dangerous predators on the African plains, those who could stay calm and focused were the ones who survived. Those who panicked, or let emotions control them, became food for lions and hyenas. Captain Chen opened her eyes and looked at her hands. They were steady, without even the smallest shake. She flexed her fingers and felt the strength in them. Human hands had evolved to grip tools and weapons, but they could also crush and tear when necessary. She stood up and began a series of simple stretches. To her, they were just basic exercises to keep her muscles loose. But to the aliens watching, her movements looked wrong somehow. Too fluid, too controlled, like a predator testing its own body before a hunt. "Look at how she moves," whispered a gas creature to its companion. "It is like she is made of flowing water." "No," replied the other gas being. "It is like she is made of controlled violence." Sarah finished her stretches and walked over to where Ambassador Torres was standing. The older man looked worried, which was understandable. If Sarah lost this fight, it would make future negotiations much more difficult for all humans. "How are you feeling?" Torres asked quietly. "Good," Sarah replied. "Ready? Is there anything I should know? Any strategy you are planning?" Sarah thought for a moment. "Do you remember learning about human history in school? About how we used to hunt animals much larger than ourselves?" "Yes, I remember reading about that. But those were primitive humans using spears and arrows." "The tools changed," Sarah said. "But we did not. We are still persistence hunters. We are still pack hunters. We are still designed to kill things that are bigger and stronger than we are." She looked across the room at Commander Vexis Thara, who was showing off his weapons to a group of admiring Zephyrian assistants. "He thinks this is going to be like his other fights. He thinks I will try to match his strength or run away from his blades. He is wrong. What are you going to do?" "What humans have always done," Sarah said simply. "I am going to find his weakness and use it against him." Across the room, Vexithara was indeed confident. He had fought representatives from 17 different species over his long military career. Some had been stronger than him, others faster, and a few had been more intelligent. But none had been able to combine all those traits effectively. More importantly, none had been willing to take the kind of damage necessary to get close enough to hurt him. "This will be over quickly," Vexthera told his assistants. Humans are small and weak. They have no natural weapons like claws or poison. They are just another talking animal species that got lucky and learned to build starships. One of his assistants, a younger Zephyrian named Kethtar, looked uncertain. Commander, the databases say that humans come from a very dangerous world. Perhaps we should be more careful. Vexithara laughed and slapped Kethtar on the back with one of his 4 hands. Dangerous worlds create dangerous animals, not dangerous intelligent species. Intelligence comes from safety and comfort, not from constant fighting. These humans probably just lived in caves while the real predators ruled their world. Kethtar nodded, but he still looked worried. Something about the human female bothered him. She was too calm, too quiet. In his experience, prey animals that acted like that usually had hidden defenses. The combat circle was now ready. The watching aliens had arranged themselves in a large ring around the fighting area. Recording devices were set up at multiple angles to capture everything that was about to happen. Some species had even sent. The recordings lived to their homeworlds where billions of aliens would watch a human fight for the first time. Sarah walked to the center of the circle. She had removed her military jacket and boots but otherwise looked exactly like she had when she first entered the meeting room. No armor, no weapons, no special equipment. Just a human woman in simple black clothing. The difference was in her eyes. They had changed from the warm brown they had been during the negotiations to something harder and colder. Ambassador Torres had seen that look before, during his military service. It was the look of someone who had decided that violence was the only solution to their problem. Commander Vexithara entered the circle from the opposite side. His 4 blades caught the light as he moved, and his blue skin seemed to glow with inner fire. He was larger than Sarah had expected, and faster too. But she had fought large, fast opponents before. "Last chance to surrender, human," Vexthara called out. "I will make your death quick if you admit that your species is inferior to mine." Sarah did not reply. She simply stood in the center of the circle and waited. The crystal being who was serving as judge raised one of its limbs. "Combat will begin on my signal. There are no rules except that the fight ends when one combatant can no longer continue. Are both fighters ready?" Vexithara raised his 4 weapons and roared his readiness. The sound echoed through the room like thunder. Sarah simply nodded once, then let the combat begin. The galaxy was about to learn why humans were the apex predators of a death world. 5 seconds, Commander Vexithara exploded into motion the instant the judge gave the signal. He had planned this attack carefully, using the same strategy that had won him victories against dozens of other species. All 4 of his arms moved in perfect coordination, creating a whirlwind of sharp metal that no opponent had ever survived. The attack was beautiful in its deadliness. The blades moved in crossing patterns that covered every possible escape route. High, low, left, right. There was nowhere for Sarah to go. Any normal opponent would have been cut into pieces before they could even react. But Sarah, Chen was not a normal opponent. First second, instead of backing away from the attack like every other fighter Vexithara had faced, Sarah stepped forward. She moved toward the spinning blades instead of away from them. It was the last thing the Zephyrian commander expected, and it saved her life. By stepping inside the reach of Vexithara's arms, Sarah made most of his weapons useless. The blades were designed for fighting at a distance, not for close combat. Suddenly, his 4-armed advantage became a problem instead of a benefit. Sarah's right hand shot out like a striking snake. Her fingers were held straight and stiff, turning her hand into a weapon. She struck a specific point on Vexithara's neck, right where several important nerves came together. Humans had learned about pressure points thousands of years ago when they studied their own bodies to become better fighters. They discovered that a precise strike to certain spots could cause instant numbness, pain, or even paralysis. Vexithara felt his upper left arm go completely numb. The blade fell from his suddenly useless fingers and clattered on the floor. For the first time in his long fighting career, he felt a touch of fear. Second, the Zephyrian commander tried to adjust his attack, but Sarah was already moving again. While he was still confused by the loss of his arm, she drove her elbow upward into his chest. The impact was devastating. Sarah's elbow was powered by muscles that had evolved to throw spears at charging elephants and swing clubs at attacking predators. The force of the blow lifted Vexthara completely off his feet, even though he weighed twice as much as she did. The air rushed out of his lungs in a painful whoosh. His grip on two more of his weapons loosened as his body tried to deal with the shock. He had been hit before in his many fights, but never like this. The human strike felt like being kicked by a charging beast. The watching aliens gasped in amazement. They had expected the human to die quickly. Instead, she was attacking one of the galaxy's most feared warriors and actually winning. Third second, as Vexthara stumbled backward, trying to catch his breath and regain his balance, Sarah's leg swept behind his knees. It was a simple move, but perfectly timed. The Zephyrian commander, already off balance from the elbow strike, crashed to the floor of the combat circle. Before he could even think about getting up, Sarah's hand closed around his throat. Her grip was exactly precise, tight enough to cut off the flow of blood to his brain, but not tight enough to crush his windpipe completely. She wanted him unconscious, not dead. Not yet. The aliens watching from around the circle could not believe what they were seeing. In just 3 seconds, a small human had taken down a warrior who had never lost a fight. Some of them began to understand why Earth was classified as a death world. Fourth second, desperation gave Vexthara new strength. His remaining functional arms flailed wildly, trying to break free from the human's grip or land a blow that would force her to let go. His right hand still held a blade, and he swung it toward Sarah's head with all his remaining power. Sarah's free hand moved faster than most of the aliens could follow. She caught Vexthara's wrist just as the blade reached her face. For a moment they were locked in a test of pure strength, his four-armed power against her two-armed determination. Then Sarah twisted. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the silent room like a gunshot. Vexthara's wrist snapped with mechanical precision, the result of leverage and technique rather than raw strength. His last weapon fell from his now useless hand. The watching aliens began to realize that they were not just seeing a fight. They were seeing a demonstration of why humans had survived on a world that would kill most other species. Fifth second. Commander. Vexthara looked up into Sarah's brown eyes and saw his own death reflected there. The proud Zephyrian warrior, who had conquered worlds and defeated the champions of 17 different species, finally understood what he was facing. This was not just another alien species that had learned to build spaceships. This was a predator from a world where everything was a predator, a creature that had evolved not just to survive, but to hunt and kill things larger and stronger than itself. Now you know, Sarah said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, why humans never lose wars once we decide to fight them. Vexthara tried to speak, to beg for mercy or call for help, but Sarah's grip on his throat made speech impossible. His yellow eyes grew wide with terror as he realized that his pride and arrogance had led him to challenge something far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. Sarah increased the pressure of her grip with surgical precision. She had studied Zephyrian anatomy during her preparation. Just as any good soldier studies her enemy, she knew exactly how much pressure was needed to cut off blood flow to his brain completely. Vexthara's eyes rolled back in his head as consciousness fled from him. His body went limp in Sarah's grasp. But she was not finished yet. With the same calm efficiency she had shown throughout the fight, Sarah shifted her grip. Her hands moved to either side of Vexthara's head, positioning herself for the final strike. The watching aliens held their breath, somehow knowing that they were about to witness something that would change their understanding of humans forever. For the record, Sarah said, loud enough for everyone to hear. He could have stopped this at any time by apologizing. Pride is a dangerous thing. Then her hands twisted sharply to the right. The crack of Vexthara's neck breaking was loud in the silent room. His head turned at an angle that was clearly wrong, and his body stopped moving completely. Commander Vexthara, terror of the Zephyrian Empire and conqueror of worlds, was dead. Sarah stood up slowly, not even breathing hard from the fight. She looked around the circle at all the watching aliens, making eye contact with as many as possible. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. Let this be a lesson to anyone who thinks humans are weak, she said. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We are still here. Everything that tried to stop us is extinct. The silence in the room was total. Not one of the dozens of alien witnesses made a sound. They were all trying to process what they had just seen. In 5 seconds, everything they thought they knew about humans had been proven wrong. The galaxy was about to change forever. The observation deck remained completely silent for a full minute after Commander Vexthera's body stopped moving. Dozens of aliens from across the galaxy stared at the scene before them, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Many of them had seen death before, but never like this. Never so quick, so precise, so completely one-sided. Captain Sarah Chen stood calmly beside the body of the Zephyrian commander. She was not breathing hard. She was not shaking from adrenaline. She looked exactly like someone who had just finished a routine training exercise, not like someone who had just killed one of the galaxy's most feared warriors in single combat. The first sound to break the silence was the quiet drip of blood hitting the floor. A few drops had splattered on Sarah's hands during the fight, and now they were falling onto the deck of the space station. The blue color looked strange against the gray metal. Sarah walked calmly to the nearest cleaning station, a device designed to help different species maintain their hygiene. She placed her hands under the cleansing beam and watched as the blue blood washed away. Her movements were casual and efficient, as if she washed alien blood from her hands every day. Ambassador Torres was the first person to move. He walked slowly across the combat circle, stepping carefully around Vexthera's body until he reached Sarah's side. His face was pale, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "Ladies, gentlemen, and collective consciousnesses," Torres said, addressing the crowd of aliens. "You have just witnessed why Earth is classified as a death world, and why humans have never lost a war once we decide to fight it." His words seemed to break the spell that had fallen over the room. Suddenly everyone was talking at once. The crystal beings chimed like broken music boxes. The gas creatures whispered in voices like wind through dead trees. Other species made sounds of shock, fear, and amazement. But underneath all the noise, Sarah could hear something else. The soft hum of recording devices. Every moment of the fight had been captured from multiple angles. Within hours, those recordings would be spreading through the galactic communication networks. A Zephyrian assistant, the young one called Kethtar, approached the combat circle. His yellow eyes were wide with shock as he stared down at his dead commander. When he looked up at Sarah, she could see a mixture of fear and respect in his gaze. What do we tell the Empire?" Kethtar asked quietly. "You tell them the truth," Sarah replied. "Your commander challenged me to single combat, and he lost. According to galactic law, there is no crime in defending yourself during a formal challenge. But he was the best of us," Kethtar whispered. "He had never been defeated." "Now he has," Sarah said simply. "And if anyone else from your empire wants to try the same thing, they will end up the same way." The young Zephyrian nodded slowly and backed away. Sarah could see that he was already planning what he would say in his report back to the Zephyrian military command. The story he told would spread fear through their entire empire. Across the room, the crystal beings were having an intense discussion among themselves. Their bodies pulsed with rapid color changes as they shared information at the speed of light. Finally, one of them approached Sarah. "Captain Chen," the hierarch said, its voice like the sound of wind chimes in a storm. "We must revise our assessment of human capabilities. Our previous calculations were insufficient." "What kind of revisions?" Sarah asked. "We had estimated human reaction times to be average for a species your size. We now calculate them to be 300% faster than our previous assessment. We had classified human strength as normal. We now understand it to be far above galactic average. Most importantly, we had failed to account for human tactical thinking during combat." Another crystal being joined the conversation. "Captain, may we ask where you learned to fight like that?" Sarah thought for a moment. "Every human child learns basic self-defense. But I also spent 10 years in the military, and I studied martial arts for most of my life." "Martial arts?" "Fighting techniques that humans developed over thousands of years. We have dozens of different styles, each one designed for different situations and opponents." The two hierarchs exchanged rapid color patterns that Sarah could not understand. Finally, the first one spoke again. "We would like to propose a new treaty between your species and the Galactic Council, one that recognizes human, unique capabilities." Before Sarah could respond, Ambassador Torres stepped forward. "We would be happy to discuss new agreements," he said diplomatically. "But perhaps we should wait until word of today's events has spread through the galaxy. I suspect many species will want to renegotiate their existing agreements with humanity." He was right. Already some of the alien representatives were talking urgently into their communication devices, sending word back to their home governments. Sarah could imagine the panic that would spread when the recordings of the fight reached different worlds. A gas creature that Sarah had not spoken to before drifted over to join the conversation. When it spoke, its voice sounded like whispers in an empty room. "Captain Chen, we represent the collective of the Outer Rim. We have several territorial disputes with human colonies. After witnessing your demonstration, we would like to withdraw all our claims and negotiate peaceful boundaries." "That would be wise," Sarah said calmly. More aliens began approaching, each one wanting to discuss changes to their relationships with humanity. Some wanted to negotiate new trade agreements. Others wanted to apologize for past insults. A few wanted to ask if humans would be willing to serve as military advisors or peacekeepers. Sarah listened politely to all of them, but she did not make any commitments. That was Ambassador Torres's job. Her job had been to show the galaxy what humans were capable of when pushed too far. As the crowd of aliens continued to grow around them, Torres leaned close to Sarah and spoke quietly. "How did you know it would only take 5 seconds?" Sarah smiled for the first time since the fight had ended. "I did not know exactly how long it would take, but I knew it would be fast. Vexathara was a good fighter, but he had only ever fought other aliens. He had never fought a human. What made the difference? He fought with honor and tradition," Sarah explained. "He used the same techniques that had worked against every other species. But humans do not fight with honor when our lives are threatened. We fight to win, and we use whatever methods work best." Torres nodded slowly. "And now the whole galaxy knows that." "Now the whole galaxy knows that," Sarah agreed. Across the room, she could see the Zephyrian assistants carefully wrapping their dead commander's body for transport back to their ship. They moved slowly and quietly, obviously still in shock from what they had witnessed. Within days, Sarah knew the story would reach every corner of the Zephyrian Empire. The military leaders who had planned to test human resolve would think twice. The politicians who had considered taking human colonies by force would look for other options. But it was not just the Zephyrians who would be affected. The recordings of the fight were already being transmitted to hundreds of different worlds. Species that had never heard of humans before would suddenly know exactly what Earth's children were capable of. 3 hours later, Sarah received her first proof that the message had been received. A priority communication arrived from the Vegan Trade Consortium, a group of alien merchants who had been demanding unfair taxes from human cargo ships. To the human government, the message read, "We apologize for any inconvenience our trade policies may have caused. We would like to negotiate new agreements that are fair to all parties. We have enclosed a proposal that we hope you will find acceptable." Sarah looked at the proposed trade agreement and laughed. The terms were more favorable to humanity than anything Torres had dared to ask for in previous negotiations. By the end of the week, similar messages were arriving from across the galaxy. Pirates who had been raiding human shipping lanes announced that they were looking for new targets. Alien governments that had territorial disputes with human colonies suggested peaceful arbitration instead of military action. The message was spreading faster than Sarah had expected. Humans were no longer seen as weak newcomers who could be bullied or ignored. They were now recognized as the apex predators of a death world, and the galaxy was treating them with the respect that such creatures deserved. Captain Sarah Chen returned to her duties as if nothing unusual had happened. But now she was accompanied everywhere by a respectful distance maintained by alien crew members who suddenly found urgent business elsewhere when she walked by. The galaxy had learned its lesson in 5 seconds, the hard way, just like everything else humans had ever taught the universe. 1 week after the fight, a simple message was transmitted across all major galactic networks. It was an update to the species database entry for humans. Urgent revision. Previous assessment of human physical and mental capabilities was catastrophically underestimated. Recommend extreme diplomatic courtesy in all interactions. Species classification updated from developing to apex predator. Additional note: under no circumstances should any being initiate physical contact with humans without explicit permission. Violation of this guideline may result in immediate termination. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.